I'm very surprised that Miguel versus Robbie in part 2 is actually a debate, but since it's Miguel and Robbie, the two fan bases gotta duke it out. Anyways, Miguel versus Robbie in part 2. Even though they don't fight, the general community is still wondering who would come out on top if they fought. But to be honest, the arguments on both sides have been pretty mediocre, so luckily you guys have me to tell you who would win in this. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've seen tons of arguments about this thing about like, Miguel carried the team, bro, he obviously soloed Robbie. Every time I hear this argument, I want to freaking gouge my eyes out, bro, I swear. When I saw this scene, I thought it was obvious to people that Miguel was basically a placeholder captain until Robbie locked in. While I can't deny the Miguel carry was hella cool and probably the highlight of that episode, those of y'all who genuinely don't know how to scale 2v1 fights baffle me with this argument. Miguel was able to beat both of these Dublin Thunder guys without getting hit once. But guess who did land a hit on him? Enter Kwon Jae-sung, my favorite Asian man of all time. Miguel and Kwon briefly scrap, and Kwon very gracefully lands a hit on Miguel without looking like he exerted that much effort. Now whether Miguel could have won this fight is going to be a topic for another video, but the reason I'm mentioning this is Robbie was able to beat Kwon shortly after this happened, after he locked in, and he bullies Kwon so much I could genuinely accuse this show of Asian hate. But what I'm saying is, since Kwon was able to land a hit on Miguel, he scales above those two Dublin Thunder guys fighting Miguel at once. And since Robbie was the only one we visually saw, other than Axel, capable of bullying Kwon, gives you context as to why Miguel got the opportunity to carry, and that's because Robbie wasn't locked in yet. Robbie or Kwon could have easily taken out the entire Dublin team at once, and Miguel could have as well. So those of you who keep using Miguel carried, bro, as an argument, please stop. Like, this is such an ignorant argument, completely ignoring the fact that he couldn't beat Kwon when it mattered, and Robbie and Kwon could have also performed this exact same feat. On the topic of Kwon, the difference between he and Robbie's performance against Kwon should be able to show you who would win in a fight here. Now this argument of how does 1 point determine who's better, and yes, I would say this is kind of a valid argument, but this is literally their only encounter, so no wonder people put Kwon above Miguel. He never had another opportunity to prove that Kwon's 1 point is just a fluke, is what we call it. Miguel probably wouldn't lose a fight like this where he lands no hits, but Robbie's performance is just objectively better in the moment in every way. And this statement stretches into their fight with Axel. While I do believe Miguel gets the durability point over Robbie since, he doesn't really show that visible signs of damage, he does do worse against Axel than Robbie or Kwon. In the shots of that we saw him fighting Axel, he was struggling to even keep his footing, he fell so many times. And yes, I know, Robbie only defended, but if you saw my Robbie versus Axel video, I showed proof of Robbie slowly adapting to Axel, which would eventually lead into a hit. Now, I mentioned this for two reasons. Outside of the durability factor, Robbie's performance against Axel is just better than Miguel's, as he's at least able to keep his footing, as well as the fact that he would be able to adapt to Miguel's offense or defense, considering Robbie is shown to be capable of adapting to Axel's offense, and we can see that Axel's offense and defense is way better than Miguel's. And oh yeah, on a minor note, from another angle, it was shown that Kwon landed a hit on Axel here. Take that for what you will. It does benefit the argument that I was making about Kwon having a better performance against Axel than Miguel, and him not being able to land a hit on Robbie, showing Robbie is just better in every way. But for the sake of this video, I won't cling on to this argument. Now, the last major argument I hear, which is easily the most annoying one, is Miguel's gonna win in part 3, bro. Bro, I could be discussing part 2 in the comments, and some random just brings in part 3 about some Miguel's gonna win in part 3, bro. Sure, he might not, but why is that relevant to part 2 Miguel versus Robbie? If you see anyone use this argument, just please let them know that they're on to absolutely nothing. and that this is just like straight glaze at this point. But in conclusion, who will win this fight? While Miguel has Robbie beat in the durability and arguably the strength factor, Robbie just hasn't beat in like literally anything else. He is the real carry, as without him, Quan would have had a clean sweep of Miyagi-Do. Anyways guys, that's all I have for today. Make sure to subscribe as well as eat your greens, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.